So I'm having some concerns about Errol Spence. So let me give you my perspective on an interview that he gave. We're going to go through 7 ideas. So idea number 1, his return, Errol Spence's return nearly collapsed because his body initially refused to respond the way he expected. Is this a concession? Is this a concession that he's struggling in camp? Was he struggling doing the training, doing the workout? Or was he struggling in sparring? Or was he struggling in all facets of the preparation? Or is this just simply honesty that the process was difficult? And what does he mean when he said his body nearly collapsed? That is strong wording. To me, that could imply that maybe he suffered an injury. And if he did, was it a minor injury? Was it a major injury? The connotation here is that he could have had a bad camp. Now, remember, the premise is when you speak to a fighter days before the fight, the main consensus or the narrative bias that they're going to try and sell you is that they had a great camp. But Errol Spence is acknowledging that his body collapsed and that there were difficulties. And to me, that kind of sets off some alarm bells. Now, the second idea is that the biggest change in Spence's preparation was learning that rest could make him stronger, faster, and sharper. So it's this understanding of the importance of rest. Now, this slightly changes the narrative because, yes, the body collapsed, and this is strong language, but did the body collapse and then it was effectively rebuilt? Because if it collapsed, then that sounds like he's on the verge of a loss. But if it collapsed and then he rebuilt it effectively, well, then that changes the context. But I'm not sure if I'm buying this narrative. I'm on the fence. To me, the indications are that Errol might have some doubts. And of course, if your body collapses, or if you're struggling in sparring, if you're struggling in preparation, then naturally you will have doubts. Of course, every boxer's psychology and every individual's psychology is different. Let's look at the equation. Ring rust, body collapsing, and doubts is a bad combination. But maybe that premise is not true. Maybe the body collapsed, but it was effectively rebuilt. Maybe there are no doubts in Errol Spence's mind. Maybe he is just a supremely confident individual. Now, I could be wrong, but in certain interviews, I feel like the spirit of Errol Spence does not seem confident. But again, that's a feeling, and that's not factual. Now, the third idea is that Ronnie Shields has rebuilt Spence gradually, taking him from 4 to 6 round sessions to 12 round sparring. Now, to me, Ronnie Shields is a top trainer because, and that's essential, because when you have a crisis in camp, and that's an assumption, or when you're having difficulties in camp, a top trainer is essential for the rebuilding process, or for, for want of a better word, turning a bad camp into a good camp or into a better camp. So it seems to me that there were some issues with 4 rounds, 6 rounds, and what Ronnie Shields done, he's taken him through that slow evolution process from going from, okay, we'll start with 4, we'll go to 6, we'll go to 8, we'll go to 10, we'll go to 12, etc. And remember, their preparation has probably, this is not the preparation over 12 weeks, I'm assuming. I'm assuming when he was struggling doing 4 rounds, 6 rounds, that was at the beginning. Because if he was struggling to do 4 rounds at the beginning of a 12-week camp, he's going to be in trouble. So I have an assumption there. But what is relatively quite clear is that Ronnie Shields will have the tools to rebuild a boxer. He will have the tools to harness a boxer, and he will have a protocol, and he will have a philosophy. So Ronnie Shields may be an essential element here. If it was a new trainer, a trainer with less experience, I would be more concerned. And then the fourth idea is that Spence rejects the idea that ring rust suddenly makes a fighter look old on fight night. It's important to realize that Spence is not just dealing with ring rust. He is dealing with the body collapse. He is dealing with the additional ring rust, and he is dealing with doubt. That's like 3 phases there: body collapse, ring rust, and doubt. So the premise of just the issue of is just ring rust may be incorrect. Errol may be, and this is just playing devil's advocate here, maybe he's so psychologically strong that these things won't bother him. Maybe he just sees it as a challenge, and maybe that will improve his performance. He might be one of those elite type of players. But if you're Team Errol Spence, you must be concerned. If there's been issues in camp, and if he is saying such things, then that is a concern. The important question, I guess, out of all of this is how do you get the best out of Errol Spence? If his body's collapsed, or if his body's had issues, if he's had minor injuries, which is, that's common in boxing, you pick up injuries. But if he's having minor injuries, if he's struggling to do the 12-round distance, if his body is struggling, then it's like, okay, this is not an optimum situation, but how do we take him from a 3 to a 7? How do we get the best out of this? And I think, like I said, Ronnie Shields will be essential. Idea number 5, he is not treating this as a farewell fight. Once training started to feel normal, he began believing another title run was possible. The interesting thing here is that I've seen an interview where he said this could be his last fight. So here is a conflicting message. Now let's play devil's advocate. Maybe he's trying to confuse the enemy. Maybe they, Errol Spence's team, want Tim Tszyu to start fast so they can walk him into counters. Now Ronnie Shields, again, is experienced, so he will have the knowledge to guide Errol. Maybe Errol does not know how he feels. Maybe, on Monday he feels great, but on Tuesday he feels unsure, and that's reflected in these ambiguous answers in terms of, in one interview he says it could be his farewell fight, or in another interview he says no, he feels like he could win a title. Again, maybe I misrepresented what he said. And then the 6th idea is that the family has reported that they want him to retire, which makes this return feel personal rather than financially necessary. The motivations are pure here, but is Errol Spence's body still able? That's a question. Maybe it's a question that he won't be able to answer until Saturday. If his body collapses in the ring, he is in serious trouble. But if he rediscovers his form, it could be a dominant, beautiful performance. However, when you put everything into the equation, it may not only be Tim Tszyu that is his opponent, because Errol Spence will be fighting the crowd, he'll be fighting Tim Tszyu, but he also might be fighting himself. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community, and that means I'm interested in your thoughts, I'm interested in your perspectives, and I'm interested in your observations. Now, if you want to support the channel, press like, hype, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.